So the question we've been getting from everybody,
Pretty much
clients, our partners, friends, literally everyone, is what is going on at Zeb?
Yeah, and I think there's no one singular answer to that question. Pretty much everything, anything that you could look at Zeb has fundamentally changed over the last few months.
At a DNA level?
Yeah, I would say at a DNA level. I think you've heard me say that one too many times.
I have. But in many ways, this has been many years in the making.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think like this is truly a point of arrival. I would say like the inflection point of our business.
Yeah.
But it's a path that we've always been on. To your point, right? You can take one moment in history, remove it, and then still end up here and be the Zeb we are today.
And it feels like we're finally letting Zeb be Zeb.
Yeah, I would say it's the exact same thing. Not just being able to represent what we wanted, but providing the agency for everyone in the company to be really who they are and drive the curiosity that they seek.
Exactly. So it's finally time to tell the people what we did.
Yeah, let's get into it.
So I think it's important before we get into what we did to really talk about the why.
For sure.
At this point in time, Zeb's been in business since late 2023. We've now served thousands of customers, and pretty much every one of our customers is slowly evolving to realize they're becoming an AI company.
Yeah.
And earlier in 2023, part of this was driven by the fact that it was trendy to do, but now it is truly an existential crisis. There is market pressure pushing them to drive this change. They financially cannot afford not to be an AI company. So what has that sort of led to, you think?
I think the traditional answer has usually been going down a similar route, right? Which is you hire a consulting firm, you hire a system integrator, you hire Zeb, for example, and who comes with this nuanced understanding of AI, something that you don't have, and we let you become that function. We integrate these AI native functions into your business, looking at your existing process flows and seeing how to change that. But I think that slowly that model is losing grasp and losing understanding.
Yeah, and it's always been sort of we have the people, you don't have the people, we're lending you the people. That's how a lot of the big consulting firms, and frankly us, have operated all of these years.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, the term staff hog came from
exactly right. It defined an entire industry, but that has really fundamentally changed.
Yeah, and just to tap into that a little bit more, the reason it's fundamentally changed is that these traditional services firms, and like you said, us as an example, have been built on the concept that there are these specialist minds, minds that you don't have access to, information you don't have access to, experience you don't have access to. And because of that specialist model, that's why you have to go hire these firms. But when the generalist is becoming more capable than a specialist in that specialist domain area, now that fundamentally begs the question, what's the point of the specialist and why have them?
Yeah, and it's always been a little bit of both, I think, in the big consulting firms. There's been the specialty, but it's also been, hey, with all of these specialists put together, we make up a much more advanced generalist than you could ever hope to be.
Yeah.
But that moat has essentially drained.
Yeah, the moat is non-existent, right? Because the 100 billions, trillions parameters models that exist today carry so much information and so much cross-specialist domain context that can help them answer that question far more than even just the direct specialist can. And that's why these firms have traditionally said the same thing when they asked this question. They said, oh no, we use AI internally. That's been the way we operate. But the real question is, how do they use AI?
Yeah, and are they treating AI as just a tool, just another option? Or is it really fundamental and core to what they do? And I think that's what differentiates us.
Yeah, and I think the term AI native has unfortunately become so widely publicly used because, again, like you said, market feels like it needs to use that term.
True.
But I don't think really people have really tapped, a few people have, very few small people, not in our services firm space or in industry, but a few people have tapped into what that really means. And I'd like to think that the Zeb in the future is really what that represents too, the Zeb that we are now.
And I think it's important to underscore that it's not like we've stumbled onto a secret that the industry does not know, but it is really difficult when you're as big as the big consulting firms are to really turn that ship around and reorganize and essentially burn down your entire previous business model in favor of this new one.
Yeah, I think the answer is really that they just fundamentally can't, right? Or that by the point in time that they do, the Earth has moved, the world has rotated, and we're no longer in that same space. And firms like us would have already made that change.
Yeah.
And
So it's finally time to dig into what that has meant for us and what trade-offs that involved.
yeah, let's do it.
So I think before we get into what we built, it's important to understand what we had before. And what we had before, while it did have a lot of the core elements of us and it was geared towards solving some of the harder problems, we were still modeled in many ways after some of the normal consulting firms.
Yeah, embarrassingly normal consulting firms. Yeah.
And that problem was we still had so many silos. I mean, we literally called them specializations.
Yeah, exactly. And we were, without realizing it, we were almost creating a context fragmentation problem itself when we started to look at it more from this AI native lens and an element.
Yeah, and the problem with that is some of these the pieces of knowledge, some of the solutions, this doesn't get translated down, and I think it causes a lot of downstream friction as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think the whole point is that things that we've pre-solved for,
Yes.
right? Solutions, problems that we faced, right? And how that then translates into the work we do next, it can't be guaranteed that that knowledge will then coexist and then be carried over, right? We have to hope that the person who worked on it earlier is
Yes.
still somehow represented here. We have to hope that there's some SOP document that can help teach and guide something like that.
Yeah.
And so that maybe it made us all really question the full order, the way these things were happening,
Yeah.
and then also the manual intervention points that were there, and why not thinking about it from an autonomous lens.
Yeah, so much manual intervention, so much friction, and I think finally it sunk in for us that friction is a choice,
Yes.
right? It is a structural choice,
Yes.
and
Both
this
in the
is-
law of physics and in the way of our
true,
business.
true, in every way.
Yeah.
And so we've now chosen to fix it.
Exactly. Rewrite it from the ground up and remove each and every one of those breaking points.
And that's the only choice. So I think the easiest way to describe what we've built is the analogy of the steel mill. And part of what
It's a really
I
good
love
analogy.
about this, yes, thank you. And it is really how we created the name The Foundry, which is, the entire half of the company that operates in this way. In the steel mill, raw materials go in, finished product comes out. In an AI world with Zeb and with Substrate that we're going to reveal very soon, raw context comes in. And this context is our client's business, their problems, the outcome that they're working towards, everything that they're trying to optimize towards, that comes in the form of raw context to us.
How they measure that outcome.
How they measure that outcome, very important. And at the end of it, a finished product, solution, something that actually achieves that outcome is what comes out.
Yeah.
And in an AI world, this can happen essentially near instantaneously.
Yeah, and even as opposed to thinking about it like in time and instantaneous like that, I would like to think about it more like energy throughput. And when I
Sure.
say energy, I mean not just, it could be energy in the form of like power and compute, the traditional use of the word,
Yeah.
but also energy in the form of time, effort, people involved, the number of fingers that ended up making the food, so to speak.
Yeah, right. The number of cooks in the kitchen, which is essentially like an efficiency or optimization problem.
The same thing the steel mills are currently and always going to be trying to solve for.
Exactly. And there is one part, though, of the steel mill that doesn't quite capture the second half, maybe, of what we've built at Zeb.
Yeah. Before we get into that and talk a little bit more about the forge, I really want to show the people Substrate and really get into that.
True. So it's time to get into Substrate.
Substrate is Zeb's autonomous engineering layer. The way to think about it is it's the first responder for every piece of engineering work that really comes in. The moment a work item lands, Substrate spins up a pre-configured session. It lands the full project context that it was able to curate and establish itself, and like a code base, the history, the customer calls that we had to get there.
Yeah.
And it starts working. Before an engineer even opened their laptop to really get on it. And when an engineer connects, they're not really starting from zero. They're reviewing work that's already in motion.
And this is an important point, right? The work that's already in motion. Because a lot of the time, I think throughout this, you hear us say autonomous, less human in the loop, less manual intervention. But I think what we're really trying to ensure is the core ethos that we've come and said so many times now, which is you can outsource the thinking, but you cannot outsource the understanding. And
Yeah.
so we want our people to really be grounded in that understanding.
Yeah, because it's understanding that really develops change, right? Without knowing what you're producing, there's no really good way to critique it. There's no really good way to improve it.
Exactly.
There's no way to say that you've hit the ceiling and now there's no further that you can go.
Exactly.
And I think that's really what pivots Substrate to be different than the idea of just other like agentic development products, right? Or rather than even saying substrate, what makes Zeb different from
Yes.
those companies and products that really just hone in on the idea of making development faster through agents.
So Substrate runs our execution. It lives in the foundry. Work comes in, we ship outcomes. But there's a second part to how Zeb operates, and I think it's the part that you're the most excited about.
I mean, it's the part that makes this entire process defensible, really.
Yes, and that is the forge.
Yeah. The forge is beyond just looking at it as like a substrate specific thing. I would like to take a second back and look at it as Zeb as a whole.
Yeah.
The way we really restructured Zeb is, as you said, specializations is what we were kind of built on earlier, right?
Right.
Teams that carry that specialized domain-specific context that we couldn't really treat like a generalized problem. That's all going away now. We've kind of, whether our engineers like it or not, we've put them in a very uncomfortable situation where we feel uncomfortability is the moat that they live in, which is between research and applied research.
Yes.
And seeing those as the only two core permanent functions of our business, right? Either we are innovating at the most latest scale of the business of where technology stays, or we're taking those innovations that we gain and embedding it into real outcome-driven value work.
Right, and this is where we talk a little bit about primitives versus derivatives in the constructs that we think about this in.
Yeah, and I think that's really important as we think about how a model itself really works. We talk about next best token paradigm and how all of what you see from a model is really a probabilistic distribution to find the next best token. But there's a lot happening underneath there, and we are of the firm believers that there really is understanding in these models.
Yes.
While we don't have all the interpretability mechanisms to really able to understand what that understanding looks like, especially as these large language models are becoming much, much bigger at scale too, we believe that there is some fundamental knowledge that they're producing through the context that they're gaining. But we also see that they're limited in terms of what they can produce at the raw primitive layer.
Yes.
The same way humans are inherently primitive, are limited in that same function. But humans, we believe, have a very much better chance at producing those raw primitives.
Absolutely.
Because there's so many unknown or underlying parameters that a model currently isn't intaking, right? Almost the emotional experience and the nature of learning and all of those things layered on each other that a human absorbs in every given moment.
Yes, and human beings inherently can be transformed by a single experience, right? And these are things sometimes we call it intuition, sometimes we call it just experience, but the cross-section of these two things, they transform people in a much greater and broader context than even a model can be transformed.
Yeah, and I think that's exactly where we think about the human moat being compounding and not depreciating in that given instance.
And this is the moat that really the Forge lives in, creating new raw primitives that we can then pass on to the execution engine, to Substrate, to the foundry, to continue making our clients' outcomes much more achievable.
And I think that's the real core point of the Forge to touch on itself, right? Now, how does this translate back to the Substrate? We allow Substrate to auto-evolve within itself through what it learns, through its experience and its own understanding. But we also make sure the Forge has a critical and core input as to what the Substrate is living off of. And so that those research and applied research teams, they're not working in isolation. They all are using Substrate still at the underlying level. So the experience and the work Substrate is gaining from working with those research and applied research teams is how Substrate makes auto-evolution actually conducive and how it's actually learning something new.
Yeah, it really actually generalizes the outcome problem.
Yeah, it basically allows us to be the first firm to say that we are making a system cheaper, faster, better the next time, but also more intuitive, more knowledgeable the next time as well.
Yeah, it's literally built into its DNA.
Exactly. So just to take a step back from it all, because I think we've gone over so much in so little time, the Foundry allows us to execute, and deliver at the speed and at the time and everything that we can do. And then the Forge allows us to extend what is possible out of the Foundry, allows that auto-evolving function that we like to talk about.
Yeah, and this is really the auto-evolving function. This is really why we're able to make the claim that we're making today, which is 100% outcome guarantee for all of our clients. The only reason we're able to say that is our environment, Zeb as a whole, gets better with every single outcome that it delivers.
Yeah, I don't think that that's something very, a lot of firms can say.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's inherent for us in the way that we begin every single engagement with a partner, with a client, before we write a single line of anything, before we scope anything, we're asking them one question. What are you trying to optimize toward?
Yeah, and once we know that, the horses are off to the race, right? We can let the system and the ecosystem that we created really function, right? We finally go from treating AI as this like tool or plug-in onto
Yeah.
the business to becoming the crux and core of it all. And we're really happy to make that claim.
And only by doing this can we truly say that we are a partner. We're not a vendor. We don't exist in this artificial separation between us and the client. We are a partner. We are in this with them, and we're optimizing toward the outcome.